thought it was just a simple favor. My husband's colleague offered me a ride. Polite, professional, until we stopped at that light. What he said next, I wasn't ready. This one moment changed how I see everything. Stay tuned, because this story takes a turn you won't expect. The midday sun dipped low, casting long golden rays across the quiet street where our journey began. My husband's colleague, Mr. Harris, a polite, unassuming man, had offered to give me a lift home after a business lunch. I remember feeling grateful, the ease of it all, 2 acquaintances, a short ride, no fuss. We settled into his car, the hum of the engine a quiet backdrop to our light conversation. He asked about my work and family, I asked about his new project at the firm, and the rhythm of everyday life gently filled the space between us. As we approached the first traffic light, I glanced out the window. The world outside seemed ordinary, children walking home from school, the soft bark of a distant dog. A breeze stirring the leaves on old elm trees. The light changed, and he slowed. That's when he turned to me, eyes calm but purposeful. His voice was soft yet carried a weight I hadn't expected. I have something to tell you, he said. I remember how his tone shifted then, no longer casual, but earnest, as if unburdening a secret he'd carried too long. The car idled beneath the red glow of the stoplight. Around us, time paused. In that moment, I realized this would be no ordinary ride. His words arrived gently, slowly building until the truth lay bare between us. He spoke of things I had never glimpsed, a side of life hidden behind boardroom doors and polite conversation. He spoke of pressure, of whispered decisions, of moral choices tangled in ambition and loyalty. I listened, heart steady, as he revealed a dilemma that had gnawed at him for months. A decision he'd witnessed, a misstep that could not be unseen. And he'd been racked, torn between speaking out and protecting lives. Careers, reputations. The car's interior felt charged with the weight of his confession, the engine's hum now a distant memory. My breath caught as he named names, spoke of agreements made in private offices, conversations that never reached the light of day. I had known him as courteous, reserved, dependable. But here, at a stoplight beneath a crimson sky, he became a man divided, caught between the comfort of silence and the ache of conscience. I drew in a slow breath and placed a hand over his. I didn't know what to say, how to comfort someone bearing so much burden. The world outside carried on, the light shifted to green, cars began to roll, pedestrians continued on their way. But we remained still, 2 people held within an unspoken promise of trust, bound by the weight of truth unveiled in the stillness of that moment. He finished quietly, his confession lingering in the soft light. I nodded, understanding that some roads don't end with easy answers. Some journeys don't grant closure the way we expect. I thanked him for trusting me, for sharing when the silence had become too loud. The rest of the ride was gentle, serene even. We passed through neighborhoods dotted with lamppost shadows, breathing in the same quiet evening air. When I stepped out at my front gate, the world felt subtly changed, dimmer, yes, but more honest. That moment at the stoplight didn't just surprise me, it changed me. It reminded me that beneath ordinary gestures, profound truths can lie waiting, revealed when we least expect them. It reminded me that kindness, and the courage to share, can emerge in the simplest acts, a ride home, a moment of pause. If you've ever wondered what happens when a quiet moment becomes everything, stay close. Because in the days that followed, the ripples of that confession touched us both in ways we never imagined. In the days that followed, the weight of that moment lingered like a quiet shadow. I found myself replaying the conversation over and over in my mind, each detail sharpening like the scent of autumn leaves pressed between the pages of an old book. There was something about the way Mr. Harris had spoken, so carefully, so burdened, that made it impossible to simply shrug it off as idle gossip or workplace drama. I thought about my husband too, wondering if he sensed any of the undercurrents swirling just beneath the surface. He was a man of steady habits and clear principles, someone who believed deeply in doing things the right way, by the book, as he always said. The kind of man who valued honor above convenience, tradition above fleeting trends. And yet, I realized that even the strongest foundations can conceal cracks, subtle shifts that no one sees until the light hits just right. Curiosity gnawed at me. What exactly was this secret Mr. Harris had revealed? Was it something that would shake the very pillars of trust and friendship? Or perhaps, it was a glimpse into a more human, flawed side of the people we think we know best. The more I thought about it, the more I understood that sometimes, the stories that matter most are not the grand tales of heroism or scandal, but the quiet, intimate ones told in the spaces between words. It was the kind of revelation that makes you pause and reconsider everything, not with anger or judgment, but with a profound sense of empathy. Because beneath every mask, every polite smile, lies a story, complex, imperfect, deeply human. That evening, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, the world outside darkening to a soft velvet blue. The gentle ticking of the clock was a steady heartbeat in the room. I wondered if Mr. Harris felt relief after our talk, or if the burden was still heavy upon his shoulders. I wanted to reach out, to say something that would ease his mind, but I knew some things could only be carried alone. Still, I found myself grateful. Grateful for that unexpected moment at the stoplight. For the courage it took to speak. For the reminder that sometimes life's most profound lessons come not from grand gestures, but from quiet moments shared in the hum of an ordinary car ride. As the days turned into weeks, I kept thinking about how that conversation had changed me. How it had made me more aware of the unseen struggles people carry, the silent battles fought behind closed doors. And how it had deepened my understanding of the delicate balance between trust and truth. It made me cherish the simple acts of kindness, the gentle honesty we often overlook. Because sometimes, those are the moments that save us. And so, the story continued, not with fireworks or dramatic reveals, but with the steady unfolding of understanding and compassion. The kind that only time and reflection can bring. If you've ever found yourself caught in a moment that changed everything, you know what I mean. It's the quiet turning of a page, the soft opening of a door long closed. And it's often there, in those still, unexpected places, that we find the truths that shape us forever. In the days that followed, my mind kept returning to that moment beneath the red light. It was strange how a simple stop at an intersection could feel like a crossroads in life, where paths shift, and nothing quite looks the same afterward. I found myself watching for Mr. Harris in the office halls, wondering if the weight I had seen in his eyes still rested there, or if speaking aloud had somehow eased his burden. At home, I shared nothing of the conversation with my husband. It felt like a secret entrusted to me in confidence, a fragile thing that needed to be handled with care. Besides, I wasn't even sure what to say. Some truths are like shadows, they are darker when exposed to light, and sometimes, it's better to hold them softly. Like a whispered prayer. Yet, the quiet unease lingered. I noticed my husband was more withdrawn that week, preoccupied, perhaps sensing the shift I had not voiced. Our usual easy conversations had a slight edge of silence beneath the surface. I wondered if the currents running through his workplace had reached him, or if the trust we placed in the world around us was quietly fraying. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, the warmth from the flickering flames casting soft golden light across the room, I finally spoke, carefully, hesitantly. I told him about the ride with Mr. Harris, about the moment at the stoplight, without revealing too much. I spoke of trust, of courage, of the strange vulnerability that can come from sharing the weight of a secret. My husband listened in silence, his gaze steady and thoughtful. Then, with a slow nod, he reached for my hand. Sometimes, he said quietly, the hardest roads are the ones we must walk alone. But knowing someone is there to listen, that makes all the difference. It was a simple truth, but one that settled deep within me. I realized then that the story was not just about the secret Mr. Harris carried, or the surprise of that unexpected confession. It was about the ties that bind us, friendship, loyalty, love, and how, even when faced with shadows, those ties can hold us steady. The days rolled on, and life returned to its familiar rhythm, but I carried that moment with me, a reminder that beneath every surface lies a story waiting to be told. And sometimes, the greatest courage is found in simply listening. And so, the quiet journey continued, each step marked by a deeper understanding of the world and the people we think we know so well. The days after that afternoon ride unfolded with a kind of quiet stillness that felt both familiar and strange. Life seemed to move on around me. The rustle of leaves outside my window, the soft hum of distant conversations, the comforting routine of morning tea and evening light, but inside, something had shifted, as if the very air I breathed had been quietly altered. I kept replaying the moment at the stoplight, over and over, in my mind's eye. The way the light caught the fine lines around Mr. Harris' eyes when he looked at me, the subtle tremor in his voice as he leaned slightly closer, as if afraid someone might overhear the truth he was about to share. The world outside the car blurred into soft shapes, and for those brief moments, it was as though time had folded in on itself. "What I'm about to tell you," he said softly, "is something I've held inside for a long time." And then, the confession came, not loud or dramatic, but a slow unfolding of words that spoke of compromise and conscience, of choices made in the gray spaces between right and wrong. He spoke of pressures to look the other way, of decisions that favored profit over principle, of silent agreements that kept the truth hidden. I remember feeling a sudden weight, heavier than the warm afternoon sun on my skin, a mixture of sadness, surprise, and a deep empathy I hadn't expected. It wasn't just the content of his words, but the courage it took to say them aloud, in the quiet stillness of a stoplight. After he finished, the silence between us was profound. It was not an awkward silence, but one filled with the unspoken understanding that something fragile had just been shared, a moment of vulnerability that could never be taken back. When we finally drove on, the light turned green and the world rushed forward again. But I carried that stillness inside me, a steady pulse beneath the noise of everyday life. That night, I sat by the window of my study, the moonlight casting soft shadows on the pages of my journal. I tried to write down the feelings swirling inside me, curiosity, concern, a growing awareness of how little we truly see of the lives around us. But words felt inadequate. Some truths are too deep to be fully captured by ink and paper. Days passed. The secret remained locked inside me like a precious, fragile thing. I found myself watching for Mr. Harris in the office halls, wondering if the burden he carried had been lightened by our conversation, or if the weight was still there, pressing down with quiet insistence. My husband noticed the change in me, though I said nothing. There was a new tenderness in his eyes, a patience I hadn't seen before, as if he too sensed the undercurrent of something unsaid. One evening, as we sat by the fire, I spoke in soft tones about trust and courage. About the unseen battles people fight in silence. He listened with a calm attentiveness that reminded me why I had trusted him all these years. Sometimes, he said, the hardest things to carry are the ones we never show to the world. His words settled over me like a warm blanket, and I realized then that our lives are woven with countless quiet acts of bravery. Moments when we choose to speak or stay silent, to protect or to reveal, to hold on or to let go. The world outside my window changed with the seasons. Leaves turned from green to gold, then drifted down in a slow, swirling dance. The air grew crisp and carried the faint scent of wood smoke and distant rain. But inside, the memory of that afternoon, of that unexpected confession beneath the stoplight, remained vivid. It was a reminder that beneath every surface, behind every polite smile, lies a story waiting to be heard. Sometimes, the greatest surprises come not from grand gestures or dramatic events, but from the quiet moments when we choose to listen, and to be truly seen. As autumn deepened into winter, the story continued to unfold, not in headlines or whispers, but in the subtle shifts of understanding that change how we see the people we think we know. I found myself thinking often about Mr. Harris, not with judgment or suspicion, but with a profound respect for his honesty and the courage it took to share a truth that might have cost him everything. In those long, quiet evenings by the fire, I realized that the real surprise at the stoplight was not just what he said, but the unexpected grace in the act of sharing itself. Because sometimes it is in the smallest moments, the pause, the glance, the whispered word, that we find the greatest meaning. And that, I think, is the heart of every story worth telling. Winter settled in gently, blanketing the world outside in quiet white. The sharp chill in the air made the warmth inside our home feel even more precious. I often found myself drawn to the crackling fire in the hearth, where shadows danced softly on the walls. And the familiar rhythm of the flames soothed restless thoughts. Even as the days grew shorter, the memory of that stoplight, the moment when Mr. Harris shared his burden, never faded. It was as if the conversation had woven itself into the fabric of my life, a quiet thread that reminded me of the fragility and strength hidden within ordinary people. I began to notice little things about those around me, the subtle weariness in a colleague's smile, the hesitation in a friend's voice, the small kindnesses that went unnoticed. It was a reminder that everyone carries stories, some spoken, many silent. And sometimes, all it takes is a moment of openness to glimpse the truth beneath the surface. One evening, as snow fell softly outside, I sat across from my husband at the dinner table. The flickering candlelight cast gentle halos around his features, highlighting the quiet strength I'd always admired. Our conversation drifted naturally, touching on work, plans, dreams. Then, hesitantly, I spoke of Mr. Harris. I told him about the ride, about the unexpected confession beneath the stoplight, not the details, but the feeling of trust and vulnerability that had passed between us. He listened, eyes steady, then reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "It's rare," he said quietly, "to meet someone willing to carry that kind of truth, even just for a moment." His words lingered in the air, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. In that simple exchange, I felt the profound bond of shared humanity, how courage and kindness ripple quietly through our lives, connecting us in unseen ways. In the weeks that followed, I found myself thinking more deeply about the nature of trust and silence. How sometimes, to protect others, we hold back what weighs on our hearts. How difficult it can be to navigate the spaces between right and wrong, especially when the consequences stretch far beyond ourselves. And yet, I also saw the quiet power in speaking honestly, even when it's hard. Because it is in those moments of truth that we find the courage to change, to grow, and to heal. One afternoon, while walking through the neighborhood park wrapped in a thick wool coat, I paused beneath a towering oak tree. The branches, bare against the gray sky, reminded me of the seasons we all pass through, times of shedding, of waiting, of quiet hope. I thought again of Mr. Harris, of the burden he carried, and the strength it took to share it. It made me realize that sometimes, the most important journeys happen within, the slow unfolding of understanding, the gentle opening of the heart. When I returned home, I found a letter slipped under our door. It was from Mr. Harris. The handwriting was careful, deliberate. He thanked me for listening, for believing, for holding his secret with kindness. He spoke of the relief that had come from sharing his truth, and the hope that maybe, in some small way, it could make a difference. Reading his words, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. It was a reminder that even the smallest acts of honesty and compassion can shine a light in the darkest places. And so, the story that began with a simple ride and a stoplight became something more, a testament to the power of trust, the courage to speak, and the grace found in quiet moments shared between strangers. As winter gave way to the soft promise of spring, I carried that lesson with me, grateful for the unexpected gift of an ordinary afternoon turned extraordinary by truth and kindness. Spring arrived gently, as if nature herself was unfolding a new chapter. The first green shoots pushed through the soft earth, and the scent of blooming flowers drifted through open windows. There was a sense of renewal in the air, a quiet invitation to leave behind the heaviness of winter and embrace fresh beginnings. I found myself drawn outdoors more often, wandering through familiar streets and quiet parks, letting the sunlight warm my face and the breeze carry away lingering doubts. Yet, even amid the beauty of new growth, the memory of that afternoon, the pause at the stoplight and the words shared, remained vivid, a delicate thread weaving through my thoughts. One afternoon, as I sat on a wooden bench beneath the budding branches of a cherry tree, I reflected on how much had changed within me. The simple act of listening, of holding space for another's truth, had opened a door I hadn't realized was closed. It made me see that beneath the surface of everyday life lie countless stories, some painful, some hopeful, all human. At work, I noticed Mr. Harris more clearly now, not just as a colleague of my husband's, but as a man grappling with his own struggles. There was a new softness in his eyes, a quiet determination that hadn't been there before. I sensed that sharing his secret had lightened his heart, allowing him to carry on with a renewed sense of purpose. Our paths crossed again unexpectedly one morning in the coffee shop near the office. He smiled when he saw me, a little hesitant, but with genuine warmth. "Thank you," he said simply, "for listening. It meant more than I can say." I smiled back, feeling a connection that went beyond words. "Sometimes, all we need is someone to hear us," I replied. That brief exchange stayed with me throughout the day. It was a reminder that kindness, even in its smallest form, holds immense power. How often do we overlook the chance to be that person for someone else? At home, my husband and I grew closer in the wake of that experience. Our conversations deepened, marked by a new honesty and tenderness. We spoke more openly about our fears, our hopes, and the quiet challenges life brings. It was as if the ripple from that one afternoon had spread quietly through the fabric of our relationship, strengthening the trust we had built over years. One evening, as we sat together watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of rose and gold, I felt a profound gratitude for the journey we had taken, both the visible steps and the invisible ones carried in our hearts. Life, my husband mused softly, is full of moments like that. Moments where we're tested, where we have to decide what matters most. I nodded, knowing exactly what he meant. It was in those moments, between words spoken and unspoken, that true character is revealed. As the weeks passed, I realized that the story I had once thought would end with a single ride home was, in fact, a beginning. A beginning of deeper understanding, of compassion, and of the courage it takes to face the truths we sometimes try to avoid. And so, with the promise of spring all around me, I stepped forward with a heart more open, a mind more aware, and a spirit quietly strengthened by the unexpected gift of a shared secret beneath a stoplight. So, what would you have done in that car? Would you brush it off, or dig deeper? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story and want more true life moments wrapped in a touch of mystery and classic narration, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell so you never miss a storytime like this. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the quietest moments speak the loudest truths.